Hi, and welcome back to my channel. Join me as I take a Lenovo ThinkStation S30 Workstation and give it a complete makeover without breaking the bank. This video covers the entire upgrade process, showcasing each step I take to transform this workstation into a powerful, efficient machine. It's perfect for tech enthusiasts and budget-conscious builders. So let's get started on this. I'm going to show you the first step of the process, which is to get inside the case and do some cleaning. Now, I have already done the cleaning, but I want to walk you through my process to help you understand how I'm doing it, so you can decide whether or not that works for you too. So very easy to get an S30 open. You got a little handle here. You just pop it open and we can take a look down inside of here. So I use two things primarily on the interior to do this job. One of them is an X-Power blower. Now I could turn this thing on, but I assure you it's like a leaf blower. It is super powerful. You're going to love this. No more canned air. No chances of having moisture come out of your canned air because you didn't, spray it intermittently, or you tipped it over leaned it to the side or something. You don't want that. It's just dangerous. The second thing I use is this brush. So we got a plastic handle and fairly stiff bristles here. So why do you need the brush? One, if you have anything in here that's a little bit caked on, you're going to want to use the brush to loosen it up. Two, whenever you work on the fans, like this fan here, you're going to want to insert it into the fan and then blow it. Otherwise, you're going to overspin that fan. Same thing here. We have the CPU fan. We're going to insert it in here and blow it out. Now, it's also good, you could do that while you have this out and you're replacing the CPU. You can clean it then, but you can do a pretty good job like this. In this station, we have a really large fan on the power supply here. Same thing. Stick it in there, blow it out really good. I like to blow it out both ways. So I come in from the back of the case, blow it through, and then also from the bottom of the power supply, just to make sure I'm really getting this clean. It's really important to have a very clean system if you want it to run at peak performance. So get you a nice brush like this. They're very cheap. You can get them at just about anywhere. Michael's, Walmart, Dollar Tree. They're very cheap. You can usually get a pack of them for a very reasonable price. I prefer this size here, but if you have large surfaces like the bottom of the case, you can go with a larger brush. It's just really hard to use like a rag or something inside of a case because you can't get anywhere with it. Whereas this really will get everywhere and get everything dislodged, and then you can hit it with the X-Power or another blower of your choice. I've been using this exact model for about 6 or 8 years now, and it still works fine. It's really good, really powerful. I've actually used it to blow the leaves and debris off my back patio. It's that powerful. But because it's that powerful, do not forget to put this in any fan that you blow. If you overspin your fans, now you got a problem. You can burn them out. You just ruined your fan. All right. So that's for the cleaning. And the next step here is it's actually a first step. is to assess the condition of the computer. So it's a crucial step, and it sets the foundation for the entire process. So what I like to do, especially if I purchase it locally or have it shipped to me, you have to open it up immediately and assess the condition. Is it bent, damaged in any way? Is something missing that was supposed to be included? These are very important factors. So if, for example, that one of the trays are missing, maybe even a main component like memory or something is missing, you need to get in touch with the seller immediately. The longer you delay, the more they're going to be hesitant to believe whether or not that was your story is true. So just get right on it, make it happen, open it up, inspect it. This is also what you want to do when you're doing a build. So I've inspected this and decided exactly which components I'm going to replace, which components don't need replaced. So it's going to take a little bit while, but if you have any thoughts of rebuilding something like or upgrading something like this particular workstation, I think it'll be worth your while to watch. So the next step that I just discussed already is cleaning the PC, and just make sure that you prevent the fans from spinning. So now we're going to go through the process of upgrading this PC. Now I've made some choices on exactly what I'm going to do. So let's take a look at the components that we're going to be adding or replacing. So here's what we've got for this build. It's a pretty bare bone build. It does have a CPU in it. It's a Xeon E5 1620 version 2. It's not a bad CPU, but we can do better. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace that CPU with an E5 2667 V2. So let's talk about the differences between those two CPUs. So the E5 1620, it has 4 cores, 8 threads, a base speed of 3.7 and a turbo speed of 3.9. So it has its merits, but the Xeon E5 2667, even though it has a lower clock speed, it has a higher turbo speed, 4 more cores. So it's a 8-core, 16-thread CPU. And it actually gives you an 87% average CPU benchmark score, or higher CPU benchmark score. So that's a significant increase in performance. So that's why we're going with that CPU. It's going to be much better at multi-threading, so really, really good. And single core performance is actually very comparable. Now I've used this particular CPU in a system that I still use to this day. And my Lenovo has that E5 2667 V2. And when I check it, and I've checked it many times, it typically runs at about 3.66 to 3.77. So it's running at a very high speed constantly, and it's very stable and very consistent. Very rare does it drop down below that, and it's more often than not right around 3.7. So it's running very well. So let's move on and talk about what we're going to come away with as the specs for this system. So the final specs are going to be having 32 gigabytes of memory, And here we go. These are the memory modules. We're going to have the Xeon E5-2667 that we talked about. I'm going to get some thermal paste on there. Now, if I wasn't replacing the CPU, I would still be removing the CPU cooler and adding new thermal paste. You don't know how long this system is sat without having the thermal paste upgrade or added or renewed. So you really want to do that. For storage, we're going to put a Lenovo 256 gigabyte SSD, and that is going to have the operating system, which will be Windows 10 Pro, loaded on it. As for extra storage, we're going to install a Seagate 1 terabyte drive. So that should give you a good start. Though actually, I'll show you later, there's actually one more bay that you could easily add another drive to, and there are two 5.25 bays that you could add drives there. So you could actually, in addition to this, with some adapters, get 3 more drives in here. So plenty of upgrade opportunities beyond what we're doing here. The last thing here is a Quadro K620. Not your most powerful graphics card, but for general business purposes, it's going to do a very good job for you. If you want to upgrade, that's going to be really simple, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So as we get going on this build, I'm going to show you how you can do future upgrades. So we'll discuss the additional drive bays, and we'll discuss the graphics card, and you'll see how it's mounted, and you can easily add a better graphics card. I'll also discuss which graphic cards I personally recommend. So let's get started. It's going to take a bit. Please bear with me. I'll try to go through it all as quickly as possible. So the first thing we're going to do is just open up this little thing here, which will probably have to be removed depending on the graphics card, or it's likely depending on the graphics card you use, which will depend on what you're going to use this system for. So let's look back down in the case, and this is what I'm talking about here. It just helps. You can set these to hold the graphics cards in a little bit better. But as I said, you may need to remove that depending on what graphics card you choose. You do have 2 6-pins here, and these can be converted with adapters into 8 pins if you need a more powerful graphics card. But as I said, let's just get started with the main component for this build, and that's going to be the CPU cooler and the CPU. So we're going to pull that CPU cooler out, and we're going to have to unplug the power here. Let's see if you can get a better shot of that here. So right down in here, you have the little power. So we need to get that unplugged. And there you see it. There you can see it. And then we have 4 screws down here. So we're just going to back those out and do it evenly. Don't just do one all the way at a it's not a good way to do it. And the same thing when you're putting the screws back in. Back them a little at a time. These are spring loaded, so you're not going to have to crank any of this down, and they come out pretty easy. So we're going to have a look at that CPU too, and just as I thought, if you take a look here, That is so dry, and it's just not making good contact between the cooler and the CPU, and that can seriously degrade performance. And that's not what you want. So we're going to clean this off. We're going to pull out that CPU and put a new clean CPU in there. But we'll definitely clean this off later. So these, you have to push it down and out to get this open. So just like so. And then you just lift it up from the end here. And you really, really want to be careful with these CPUs. Never touch the bottom. And be very careful not to bend any of the pins under it. All of those pins are lined up so perfectly nicely with these contacts. And you can't bend them, or you probably ruined your motherboard. So just be super, super careful. Now, if you look down in here carefully, you're going to see an arrow right here in the corner. So just remember that when you're putting the CPU back in there, because the CPU also has an arrow in the corner. So we're going to take this new CPU, well, new to this system. And as I said, it's a 2667 V2. And let's see if we can see the little arrow there in the corner. And you can see it right here. It's got a little arrow in the corner. And that's going to line up with this arrow down here. So just very, very gently line it all up and set it back in there. You never need to force this. If you're forcing it, that's a huge mistake. We do not want to force it. So now I'm just going to verify that it lined up perfectly. Make sure we're not making any mistakes. Now that I know we got it in there right, we're going to gently push this back in there. This one goes down first. And this one's second. And there you go. We got a new CPU in there. Now, if you were leaving the CPU in, you might want to pull it out to clean it, but it's not 100% necessary. But it's hard to clean it off good when it's very dry. It's going to be hard to get that off. Some people use rubbing alcohol. I prefer to just pull it out. But again, it's going to be very important to be gentle with it. If you get a little bit outside of it, it's not the end of the world because it's non-conductive, but it's still not a great idea. Now, it's the same thing with putting the thermal paste in there. There's a lot of schools of thought on how to do it. Some people put it just a big glob. Some people spread it out. Personally, I've done this a lot of times, and my go-to method is pretty simple, and I've tested it many times, and it seems to work good. I put most of it in the center, and then I would just put just outside of that a few little globs. Now, my thinking, and a lot of other people concur, is that this is non-conductive. So if a little bit squishes out over the side, it's not going to hurt anything. But what is going to hurt something is if you don't get enough on there, then you're not going to have good contact. And that is going to cause problems, because what happens is you get CPU throttling. And that's not what you want. We're replacing the other CPU in order to get more performance. And you can't get more performance if your CPU is throttling because it's getting too hot. So yeah, just make sure that you get enough on there. Better a little bit too much than not enough. Not enough, always bad. So you can practice as I did. If you're comfortable doing it, or you have an old computer sitting around that you don't care about, you might want to try that. You just try different ways that people suggest. Maybe even try my little 5 dots there and see how it works for you. Now, this is another important part about putting this back on. Very important. So, of course, it's important to put it back on the way it came. So we're going to do that. It's important that you do it very gently and line it up well. But now it's very important that you don't tighten one of these down all the way. Just get one started and then go crossways to the other side and get that one started. Don't tighten it all the way down and then do that again. The reason is you want that thermal paste to spread out evenly. And if you tighten one of these screws down all the way first, that's not going to give you an even spread at all. So just slowly, each time as you see I'm doing, keep going across and tighten them down a little bit. And you don't have to torque these down. You'll know when it's tight, and you just want it finger tight. You do not want to put any strength into it. That's way excessive for just about anything on a computer. It's going to be really excessive to use any strength to tighten anything down. So just don't do that. So that one's tightened down, and I call finger tight. If you can't tighten it like that, you're using too much strength. Even a fairly young child should be able to do it just with their finger and very gently. Now we need to get this back on, so we're going to get it back under here. And you can't see it down here, but there's only one way to do it. It has a notch here, and that notch will only go in if you do it the right way, unless you're trying to force it. And again, there's just about nothing on a computer that you want to force. So let's not force stuff, okay? Let's just take it nice and gentle. Slowly line it back up. Press it in there firmly. And you got it. Don't force it. So now, step 1. We have an awesome new CPU. We just increased the performance of this system by 87%. That is significant. Now, here's another problem that some people have when they're rebuilding a system. You'll see here we have 8 memory slots. And you'll also notice that some are blue and some are, I don't know, black, dark brown. Yeah, they look like they're black. So we got blue and black. Now, those are different channels. The blue will be 4 channels, and the black will be 4 channels. But the thing is, if you're not going to install memory modules in all 4 of, I believe it's the blue channels on this one, you need to check your CPU or check your manufacturer or follow the guide here on the inside of the cover. So as you can see here, DIMM 1 right here. So if you're looking at the CPU like so, and the fan going out here, then this first one, which is blue, that first one is in the first channel. So what we want to do is if you're only putting in 4, you would do the first one and the next blue one, so you'll do all of the blue. That's very important because the 4 channels give you quad channel. So let's say I just put this one memory module in here, okay? So I'll just put the first one in slot 1. Okay? Now let's say I put a 32 gigabyte memory module in there, which is equal to all of the memory I'm putting in here. These are only 4 gigabyte modules. So if I put a 32 gigabyte in here and had the same amount of memory that the whole system will eventually have, it won't work as good. What you're going to do is you're going to have single channel memory. And single channel memory, depending on the task, it's going to be different for different computer tasks, but you could be losing up to 50% of your performance based upon how memory intensive that particular task is. So we don't want to figure out which task is which and how much one uses over the other, okay? So what we want to do is just be smart, and if you only have 4 modules, you would do it just like I'm doing right now. We would put it in the second blue slot, have dual channel. Now we're going to do the other 2, and we're going to have 4 slots of memory. Make sure you line this up. This lines up in the slot, and you don't need to use any strength. As long as you got it lined up, you're going to pop it down in there. You're going to hear it click. Don't force it. Break your motherboard, you're going to start all over again. Got to buy a new system. Might as well buy a new one, because for the price you're paying for a motherboard, you could probably buy a base system and have the extra parts later. All right, now I've put 4 in. That would be 16 gigabytes. But most importantly, it is quad channel. So we're getting maximum performance from the system and from the memory. So it's not just a performance issue for the memory, it's a performance issue for the entire system, because the CPU, the more channels we have, the more bandwidth the CPU has available. That means it processes information faster. So in our case, and in any case, the best way to do this is to add modules to every slot, especially on these Lenovo S30s and some of your other systems that use server memory. It's very reasonably priced. This is all Samsung memory, so it's good quality memory, and it's very reasonably priced. Now, if you ever wanted to use this for like video editing, 32 gigabytes is probably enough for that, and you should be fine. I have 64 gigabytes in my Lenovo S30, and I do video editing with it. It's a really old system, but it works great. And I have the same CPU, the same Samsung memory, except that it's 64 gigabytes. I have a RTX 3060 in there, which I wouldn't recommend typically, but if you're going to do video editing, video rendering, then I would say that it's fine for that, because a lot of programs for video will take advantage of it. But as far as day-to-day applications, it would be CPU bound, so it would be cost prohibitive to use it for a system like this. The CPU just can't deal with it. So next, we're going to drop this K620 in there. So it's a NVIDIA Quadro K620, 2 gigabytes of memory. It has DVI and DisplayPort connections. So pretty decent card, not great card. I'm not saying it's high performance, it's not. But this system does not have any onboard graphics. So you have to choose a card. So we're just putting this in here because we're going to be putting this on our website as a business system, and for day-to-day applications like WordPress or like Word and PowerPoint, checking email, watching videos, all of that, it's going to be great. And the bonus is that if you want to do things like video editing, all you're going to need is a better card. So you can choose the card that you want for this system. So we're going to put it in the first slot right here. There are no power connections because it is powered by PCI. So all you want to do is line it up here. This tab's going to go in the back, and we're going to line it up very carefully and just get it to set down in there. Then we're going to make sure it's lined up good on the back, and we're going to gently push it down in there. You never want to force it. Just a bad idea. And there you go. Now, if you look at this one beside it, you're going to see the little tab here. If you want to take it out, you have to pull that tab back. If you don't pull that tab back, it's not going to come out. You're going to break the tab or break the card or break the motherboard. So you just have to reach in there, pull it back right there at the base, and pull it out. So there you go. Now we have CPU, memory, graphics card. We are making excellent progress. So the next thing we want to do is add our SSD, which is preloaded with Windows. So I preloaded Windows 10. I use a duplicator to in another, it's not an actual duplicator. It's a PC that I have set up that I can add drives to. So I add a new drive in it, and I duplicate a Windows 10 drive. Change the license so you have a good active license on here, and there you go. Next, this will not fit in the drive trays. It is too small. So what we need to do is put it in an adapter like this. Now there are a lot of adapters to choose from. I'll show you one more kind of adapter here. So you can just pick what kind of adapter works for you and what priced well for you. So as an example, maybe you want a more attractive little adapter. This adapter would work fine too. So these can be had for about $1 each, and they include the screws to do the mounting. And they're very cheap. They're black. They might look better in the case than this, but I'm not about aesthetics too much. I'm more concerned with performance and reliability. So we're just going to go with this, and all you're going to do is pop it in to these pins. So these holes line up with those pins, and as you see, this is going down in there from the top, and you just make sure that you have it just like you see there, and then you put it in with these to the top so you can plug in the wires. Pretty simple setup. And we're going to pop that in, and then we're just going to slide it down in there. So this one goes on the first SATA connection, so we want to make sure that we use that for this connection. I always like it, it will work on any of the others, but you really want it to be on the first SATA. So we're going to put that in, we're going to pop that in there, we're going to put this in there, and then these two SATA power connections or hard drive power connections. They're going to power the other drive we're putting in and any future drive that you want to add to the third bay. Let's get that to go all the way down in there. Something is holding it. Oh, my mistake. A little bit different than the other one, so we just need to go to the next pins. No problem. And get it back down in there. That's actually pretty good. It keeps it at height. The other one that I just showed you doesn't keep it at height. So I'm going to leave this connection undone so we can put in the next drive. So we're going to do the same thing that we just did with this larger drive. So we have this larger drive here. It's a 1 terabyte. And we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to put it in there and connect it up. You wouldn't think it'd be important, but for some reason, a lot of systems that are sold do not have these drive trays. Caddies, trays, call them different things. And that's a problem because how are you going to put a large drive like this in there? You can set your SSD in there anywhere you want. It's probably not going to be a problem, but you can't do that with a hard drive. Those larger drives, no way you can do that. So if your system that you purchase doesn't include that, yeah, now you're out some more money. So I definitely recommend that you purchase a system that has that with it already to avoid the additional costs. So now we're connecting the power supplies back in there. And always go back and make sure while you were doing all of that that you didn't jostle something loose. Now, if we were connecting a more powerful graphics card, as I pointed out, it has 6 pins. That's where we would be connecting it to the graphics card. This one doesn't have it, so we don't need that. All right, so now we have everything in place here. We changed the CPU to a 87% more powerful CPU. And we also added 32 gigabytes of memory. We added a graphics card because a lot of your workstations, they do not have onboard graphics. So the motherboard does not support any graphics. You must add a card. Very common with workstations. So something that you definitely want to take into account when you're buying your computer. Workstations typically don't have onboard graphics. So we also added the SSD with Windows 10. That's a 256 gigabyte SSD, 1 terabyte of storage, and we have a complete system build on a very good budget. It's very budget friendly. I might start pricing these for you at some point in the future, but yeah, that's not my point here. I do have a couple of videos where I got computers really cheap and showed what that can do, like a $10 server, and all I needed to do to make it a really nice server is add a SSD in Windows 10, and I had a server. Now, it had a small hard drive, but that is still a server, and it's a good start, and you can add bigger and additional hard drives down the road. Same with this. we can add one more hard drive right here, no problem. We have the connections, we have the free SATA ports over here. And if you want to add more hard drives, you have 2 more right here all ready to go. And you have one 3.5 bay here, so you could slide a drive in from the front. And then you have 2 more 5.25. Those would require adapters, but those are fairly cheap. So the only thing you would be lacking is, to have 6 drives, you would have to add a Y to this. So those are very cheap also. So you can plug a Y in here and turn these 2 into 3. So really, really good. There's no optical drive on this system. Optical drives are, as you know, not used very much now. So there will be no optical drive on here like a DVD or anything. You could easily add one in, plug it in over here to the SATAs and use this connection. But basically anything you do nowadays, they use USB for almost everything. So, appreciate you watching. Thank you for watching. To support my channel, please consider, and let me try that again. Thank you. To support my channel, please consider purchasing this exact Lenovo ThinkStation S30 by following the link in the description down below. You can order it from my website, jamesturnertech.com. We really appreciate it. And thank you for watching. If you have any questions or want to see more content like this one, then leave a comment below. Stay tuned for more tech tips, reviews, and upgrades. And don't forget, comment, subscribe for more tech upgrading tips and builds. And again, when you purchase these PCs from me, you help me get the money back so that I can do the next build. I don't make a lot on them, but it does give me enough money to make the next build. So very important. And thanks again for your support.